Into here. I've got a few minutes before work starts, and I just wanted to get some ideas out there, make a general, more general RP kind of video. Usually the ones I do are so specific on a question or a response to a question, but so I got a couple new books for Christmas. I got Modern AGE, or Modern Age, depending on how you want to say it, and I got Fate Core. Those are both off my Amazon wish list, so they weren't surprise. I mean, they were nice surprises, but it's not like someone just said, "Ooh, RP book," and bought it for me. So I've already been reading through a lot of the Modern AGE book. I'm most of the way through it, I think. Trying to find a good way to hold this camera without blocking things or showing things I shouldn't show. I'm at work. I'm a little early. But Fate Core, I just started reading Fate Core. I'm pretty sure I've played in a Fate game before, but I don't. So it must have been at a convention. I have very vague memories about it. Like, I'm reading part of the character creation, and I'm like, yeah, I think I remember doing something like that one time. Oops, knocked that off. Okay. So I have some thoughts about Fate so far. I'm on page 60. I'm in the middle of the Aspects chapter. I am reading it from the front. I love their chapter 2 where they talk about this is what a Fate game is. Like, it's, what is it? Characters who are proactive, competent, and dramatic. I think that's the list, right? And I like how at the end of each one of those little sections they give you an idea of like what was it? They're like, in the dramatic part, right? They were saying, at the very end of it, that says, this is not a Fate game is not about adventurers mindlessly going through dungeons, killing monsters, and taking loot. It is a game where adventurers are going out there facing life and death and trying to struggle with having a personal life at home as well. That chapter was really useful. I actually read it first, like on Christmas. I sat down and I read that chapter first. Then a couple days ago, I went back to the beginning and started reading through the whole thing. So you guys have probably seen my list of games, right? Rolemaster is my top system that I have experience in. I started with Marvel, TSR's Marvel Advanced. I've played Rifts. And while we were a super powerful group, we weren't cheesy about it. None of the characters or GM were really into that. If we wanted to play powerful characters, that's fine. He just threw powerful opponents at us. Wasn't an issue of being godlike and power tripping. Anyways, but I feel like I could say a more traditional, classical game style, not necessarily OSR, but tone-wise and playing style-wise, is a bit more where I come from. So I can tell that Fate is definitely going to be, Fate is definitely something different, right? Like like one of the biggest questions, I haven't gotten to the part where we deal with actual injuries and stuff like that, is somebody going to die? Like, coming from Rolemaster, I'm used to so many of my player characters, a minority to be fair, but still a good number of them, dying at one point or another, right? I've got my wife's first PC that died. I've got, there's a character whose players' plans for that character were really interesting. I was really looking forward to seeing them be developed. Gets his hand chopped off and bleeds out in 12 rounds. Because the healer also got stunned. Whoops. So that's going to be something really different. But at the same time, I don't feel like it's going to throw me off too much, right? Because there are times like these characters like these two previous characters I just mentioned, where I would have liked to have seen their story developed. I would have been fine if that one Berserker character who got his hand cut off, if he died, as he was doing the thing that he was training and practicing for. That would have been an amazing story. they're still not bad stories, as we always talk about. Like, you know, something bad happening to your character is still telling a story. They're just a little bit more along the tragedy line. And I guess, you know, always running something like Rolemaster, I can tire a bit of the tragedy line. So, while it's going to be very different to me, right? Like, I might be gasping when someone takes a certain risk, holding my breath. That's going to be more in a reaction to expecting a harshly fatal system when fate doesn't provide that as an option. I mean, like I said, I haven't actually gotten to that chapter, but I'm definitely getting the idea that, I mean, characters probably die either from making stupid choices, or because a player just wants another character and they narrate their death or something like that. So there's nothing, I'm definitely not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's something that I'm going to have to get used to, but at the same time, I have a part of me that doesn't want to get used to it per se, but wants to go down that road, right? I want to explore that. I meant to say at the beginning of the video that I don't have a script. I just had some thoughts, so this can be kind of rambly. And I can see the timer; it's already over 6 minutes, so I gotta say some other things. The other big thought I had, actually, and I was talking to Ribbit, my wife, about that earlier, is I don't know how good it is for beginner, right? Like, if I was going to introduce someone to role-playing, you might think, well, Fate's a really mechanics-light system. It should be really easy to throw them into it. It might be really easy to throw someone who's played around with writing their own stories, writing their own screenplays, books, maybe someone who's in theater. It might be really easy to throw someone like that into it, but I'm not so sure that it's going to be, like, I think, and I've made videos about this and said it multiple times, where I have no problem throwing a completely new to role-playing person into Rolemaster, because I've done it and it works. It's much more about what you provide them as a GM and the guidance you provide them than the complications of the system. But it's so much easier, right, to tell a new player, okay, you're creating a character. These are physical and mental stats about your character, right? And you're going to roll these 3 6-sided dice and total them up and put them on each line. And if you don't like how these numbers lay out, I'll let you swap one set. That's pretty easy to tell someone. It's pretty easy to tell someone, hey, if you really want to be good at crossbows, you need to take that ability at first level, and that'll make sure that you're starting that path, and you want to pay attention to it every level, or something like that, right? But Fate characters, I mean, it's all dramatic points. Like, what are your relationships? What are your personal hang-ups? What's a character trait that you have? Plus the idea that a good aspect can both be used for you and against you. Plus the aspect of a really well-written one actually talks about 2 things rather than 1 thing, right? Like, one of the examples I have in the book, right, is instead of just saying that this soldier has to prove himself, it actually says, like, the Legion demands much of you, right? Because that ties in both the idea that he always has to prove himself, and it also ties in to whom, right? So then that gives 2 avenues for getting to that aspect. And I'm just thinking about it, I'm like, if someone is completely new to role-playing, they're completely used to passively receiving the story and the characters. That's going to be really tricky. Like, I'm looking at it, I'm like, I would be making like 2 pages of notes at least that are going to be all about advice on how to create your first character if you were doing that. You know? Now, maybe it's easier for pre-gens, right? Like, if you tell someone and you're like, these are the aspects of them, right? This talks about some of your stories. These are some of your stories and how the other characters in the party interacted with that story of yours. That might give them a really good base, and these are the skills that you're good at, right? That might give them a really easy way to start off. But so maybe it's not so bad if you've got pre-gens, but as far as like actually making your first character, I'm kind of like, wow, this system's kind of tricky to get into. Unless, like I said, like maybe if you've been trying to be a writer, writing books or novels or screenplays, or maybe even like, you know, not murder mysteries, but dinner murder mysteries, right? Or you're in theater. Maybe the idea of like, well, what are the, you know, come up with aspects that have two parts to them and can be used for or against you. That might be a little bit more like in your wheelhouse. So, anyways, that's all the thoughts I have on it right now. No, it's not. I'm sorry. It's 10.5 minutes. One more thought, guys. So, I've also then, as I've been reading this, occasionally when I'm not actually like reading it, but I'm doing other things like at work or whatever, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, but where am I going to want to use this system? Right? Like, I got it because it's a popular system, and it has some ideas that I want to kind of see more specifically what they were. And it's a Christmas gift, so I didn't spend my own money on it. But I've been thinking like, well, okay, so where is it that I would want to use this stuff, right? And 11 minutes. I'm so sorry. Yeah, this ugly building behind me. I think actually this might be the system, the pre-made system that I would actually want to use for superhero stuff. I've always been wanting another superhero system besides Marvel. I don't know if I'm ready to give up the 4-color chart mechanic or the 5-color chart mechanic. I don't know if I'm ready for that. But the superhero genre is the genre where I'm not necessarily wanting people to expose their characters' lives so easily, and where I would really like to see, like, hey, you got these strong powers, but you also have these relationships, right? Like, that's the genre where I would really like to see that be brought into sharp focus. So I'm thinking that maybe what I would want to do is try out running a Supers game in Fate. And then I have a whole other set of thoughts actually about crap. If you're used to like the more classic style of play, should you even start as a Fate GM and not start as a Fate player? Because I think maybe the scope and the number ratio of aspects that you have to worry about might be better to get like training wheels to be a player first and then worry about being a GM. I guess that's all the thoughts I had on that. Okay, guys, this is like nearly 13 minutes. Comment down below. Share other video responses. I know there are especially some other Fate players out there, so, you know, love to hear from you. I'd also really love to hear from people who come from maybe an OSR or other classical game perspective and then got into Fate. And I think Fudge is really similar, so maybe Fudge as well. So maybe Alan Large can talk about this. Alan Large, that's your name, right? Red Dice Diaries. So, anyways, talk to you guys later. Sorry for the long video. See ya.